All right, thanks, Derek. We are just 24 hours away from our Thanksgiving meal, but are you worried about what you're going to do with all of those turkey leftovers? Because you know you can only eat so many turkey sandwiches. Here with a few fresh ideas is Julia Marsiglio, a U of I Dietetics student. Welcome to CI Living. Well, welcome back, actually.
Thank you.
Okay, so Thanksgiving tomorrow. Obviously, there may be some leftovers,
especially with some of the birds I've seen in the store.
Yes.
Massive.
How can we recycle them?
So what I've got here is a leftover turkey, a turkey pot pie. So it's also a lighter version of turkey pot pie. So I've got a little bit of something different going on with the crust to sort of lighten it up, because after that Thanksgiving meal, you probably don't want to be consuming quite as much. I've got simmering here just the broth and the vegetables. So that's peas, carrots, and onions in broth. So I'm going to let that simmer. And then I have a mix of the spices and sweetened condensed milk and 3 tablespoons of flour. That's going to help thicken that up, but we're just going to let that simmer for a bit. And where the real magic happens here is with the crust, because instead of your typical really high butter or high fat pie crust, we're using cottage cheese. And I know I used cottage cheese last time I was on here, but I really think it's sort of a magic food.
We love cottage cheese at our house, but I've never heard of it in a pie crust before.
Yeah, it helps to kind of bring it together. It also has some of those lumps will sort of melt and cause it to have that like flaky pie crust thing. Right. You're going to want to heat it at a pretty high temperature. So we've got the oven preheating to 425. Otherwise it gets a little bit soggy. But we do use a little bit of butter because we do need some of that in there. So what we do is we just blend the butter in with the pastry masher.
So is it helpful to have, you know, room temperature butter? Because I would think
you're going to want it cold, because if it's room temperature, it's just going to mix entirely in. And with any pastry, you kind of want the lumps, actually. That's why they say until it's like a cornmeal or even a pea-sized consistency. So you're not going to want it to be completely blended in, otherwise you don't get that flaky pastry crust.
Okay.
So what you do is you just keep mashing it in with the pastry blender until it comes to sort of the pea-sized consistency. And then what we're going to do is actually add the cottage cheese, and we're just going to toss it around, and it's not going to look completely wet. You still want it to look kind of dry with sort of that lumpy consistency, because then when you use your hands to put it all together, it's going to come together nicely and form a nice dough.
All right. So how did you come up with the idea to put cottage cheese in there?
Well, we were taking cooking class at the U of I, and we talked about how pastry becomes flaky because it has the lumps of butter in it and then they melt. And so I kind of got curious about cottage cheese, since it's lumpy as well and it will melt. And so I kind of Googled it, and I saw that that had been done before. Usually it's done with equal parts butter and cottage cheese, but I've kind of cut the butter out a little bit to make it a little more healthy.
I love that idea. Now we've got our vegetables. They're still going over here. I'll give them a little stir. Oh, that's a little hot. There you go. My bad. Oh, thank you. Is there other vegetables that we could substitute if maybe someone doesn't like the peas or they don't like the onions?
Traditionally, maybe celery would go well in a turkey pot pie. You could put whatever you like in there, really. If you have some leftover vegetables, you can throw them in. Maybe just simmer the ones that haven't been cooked at all first, but then add at the last minute anything that has been cooked. So if you do have cooked peas left over, then you could just add them maybe at the point that you add your condensed milk mixture. So that's what you're going to want your crust to look like.
Like that consistency.
And then you're going to form it together with your hands, and it's going to come together. It might be a little bit sticky at first, but you can see how even though it looks kind of dry, it starts to come together.
Yeah.
And I've actually pre-made an entire crust, because just for time.
The magic of television.
Yeah.
We love that.
But I'm just going to add this in now.
And you said there were spices in there. What spices do we have in there?
So we've got parsley, sage, savory, black pepper.
Savory? Yeah. That's a spice?
It's an herb, really.
Oh.
But, yes.
I just thought that was an adjective that we use to describe our pot pie.
That's true too, but there is an actual savory spice which I think goes really great with poultry. Okay. So you'll see it starts to thicken up. That's because of flour right away, and then we can just add our 2 cups of turkey breast.
Now, do you recommend using the white meat, or does it really matter?
Well, it will be lighter with white meat. In my house, we all love dark meat, so the white meat's what's left over, but whatever you have left over will work.
All right, so we're going to get this put into the pie crust, And then we don't have to top it with anything. We're just
I'm going to roll that out actually and top it with a top crust. So I'll roll that out, trim it just like a regular pie crust. Make sure you put some holes in it so the steam can escape. And then it's going to cook for about 40 minutes in the oven.
All right, and that's just enough time for us to check back in on it later. So you're going to hang around.
Yeah.
Okay, if you like this recipe, maybe to bookmark it for Friday when you got all those turkey leftovers, go to CILiving.tv right now. We actually have it posted for you to make for dinner tonight or this weekend.